Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Matt Kaplan of the Planetary Society. Sitting next to me, my colleague, Sarah Al-Ahmed. And we are not where you usually would find us. We are at the Pasadena Hilton Hotel, which this year is the home of the NIAC Symposium, the NASA Innovative Advanced Concepts Symposium, which is, to my way of thinking, and I think you'll hear this from others, including Sarah, one of the coolest things that an already very cool agency, NASA, does. And we're going to hear more about that from Sarah, but we also have some special guests. You see them sitting down there at the end because we don't have somebody to run the camera. So they just have to sit quietly, including the guy who hired me over there in the green shirt. Sarah, welcome.
This is our first time doing an event together, Matt. This is amazing. And it's NIAC. I
And
know
it's
you
nice.
love this program so much, so I'm so glad to have you here today.
I love this program so much. As you know, for years, I did what you are doing here this year and you did last year, which is hosting the NIAC webcast, the live stream.
Yeah, for the last 2 days, I've been here, and during the break sessions, in between all of the amazing talks, in between all the keynote speakers and all the different NIAC fellows, I get to do more in-depth interviews with them personally to share with the audience in between. So I get the personal experience of getting to talk with a lot of the fellows. So I'm having a wonderful time.
And I am writing to Amber Trujillo, who is at her home base, making sure that you're actually hearing and seeing us because we don't really have a system that's up and running to tell us that. So hopefully we're going to hear any moment from Amber that we're actually looking good. We assume you are. And of course, we thank you because if you're watching this, chances are really, really good that you are a member of the Planetary Society. Now, why aren't we doing this in the member community? You probably got some email in the last couple of days letting you know that we are on top of a tremendous transition for the society and especially how all of you interact with us. We thought it might be happening today. They want to get it just right, so it's probably going to happen tomorrow. You will hear more about that because you're going to need to set up a new username and password. We apologize for that, but trust us, this is going to be a tremendous improvement. That's why we're on Zoom tonight instead of doing this in the member community. And we hope that that is working out for everybody out there. But now to the topic at hand. Um, you started this last year. You are doing a great job in the back, hosting the
Thank
live
you.
stream, doing those interviews, little stand-ups. And who are the types of people that you're meeting? I know we're going to talk to our first guest about this as well.
I mean, they come from all different walks of life. While we're going to be talking to people that come from NASA facilities tonight, we have people in private industry. We have people with all sorts of dreams who are trying to shape the future of space exploration. And I think what's really special about this program is this is literally where we take the science fiction, the really out there ideas that might be able to completely revolutionize space, and actually give them the funding they need to see whether or not they're viable. I get to ask them questions, but I want to give you out there in the audience an opportunity to ask our guest questions as well. So I've actually grabbed some swag for you. If you're sending us questions, you can either do it within Zoom, or if you're in the events section in the events discussion for this event, drop your question in there. If you're in Zoom, please identify yourself. I'm going to go through and randomly select. I have a NIAC pin, a NASA pin, and a planetary radio sticker that I will be mailing you. So please keep your questions in there. Amber's going to be looking for them, and then we're going to ask them to our guests.
And
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to warn everyone, we have two sections of this discussion. So first, we're going to have Ron Turner, who is the science advisor for NIAC, and of course, our co-founder and someone who's on the NIAC external committee, Lou Friedman. We're going to be talking to them about NIAC more broadly in the first half hour. After that, we're going to bring on some NIAC fellows so you can talk to some of the people that are actually doing this work and ask them about their amazing projects and how NIAC has helped facilitate all of that for them.
Before we get to our guests, give me your impressions. Now you're second. You've done one and two-thirds NIAC symposia. Um, I know you're as excited about this stuff as I am.
I mean, some of these projects are the stuff of dreams, right? I mean, who doesn't want to see a fleet of 1,000 light sails or, laser sails flying out to Proxima B, or mobile astro pharmacies that can not only save people out in space when they need medication or save them here on Earth. There's so many innovative ideas that might not otherwise get the funding that they require. So you can kind of see the sparkle in people's eyes. They are so excited that they actually get to do this work because who else is going to fund them to do this awesome stuff?
And it is the diversity of projects is just amazing. Something like 50 projects that I counted, all presenting over 3 days, each of them giving a recorded presentation with nice graphics, and then they come up live and answer questions. And I'm sure you're going to talk to these guys about the kinds of synergies that they find when they are out in front of their colleagues, their fellow fellows, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the really important thing about these kinds of symposia, right? People can suppose their ideas, propose them online, get the funding, do the work, but it's not until they're all in one room together when they have these opportunities to talk to each other in poster sessions or in the after events that are going on right now. That's when the real magic happens because you get to combine all these things together in ways that you wouldn't have thought otherwise. And people ask some really insightful questions during those
Yes.
sections that really do invent things that then later go on to inform how these NIAC fellows continue with the next phases. Because there's 3 phases to these fellowships, and if you do really well, you can go on to the next phase and get even more grant funding.
I want to let you get to them right after we mention our first comment, not a question, but a nice comment. Actually, there was a question here from Car E. He says, he or she, wonderful program. Was the Alcubierre warp drive a NIAC proposal? How much sci-fi would you consider this proposal versus real science, or is that part of the goal? Well, that's one you can throw to our guests. I will say that today's keynote was a representative of the National Academy of Sciences Science and Entertainment Exchange. And we had 3 television producers up here, 2 of them from Trek. And I said to them, you do know that Zephram Cochrane, the inventor of warp drive, is going to get started with a NIAC fellowship at some point, right?
Right.
So please take it away.
I mean, to my knowledge, the Alcubierre drive wasn't funded by NIAC. Is that
No.
correct?
He was on planetary radio, though, I can tell you that. And he doesn't think it's ever going to be built. But hey, we'll know what to call it when it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ron, you're the one that kind of runs the numbers on all of this. How many people from what different disciplines are represented within this NIAC program?
Oh gosh, it's a huge number and a huge diversity of people.
Mm.
Now, are you talking about how many funded fellows have we had? It's in the hundreds now, over the course of the 12 or 13 years that NIAC has been working out of NASA headquarters. Now, remember that there was a predecessor NIAC called the NASA Institute for Advanced Concepts, led by Bob Casanova, that had another 150 or so fellows by the time his 9 years of that program ended. So all told, we've been lucky enough to be able to fund several hundred studies, several hundred very creative people. It's just been awesome.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that is so many opportunities for advancing the future of what ultimately becomes real space exploration. What would you say are some of the most impactful projects that have actually gone on to become part of future space exploration?
So I hate that question mostly because every time it comes to me, I have to, it's like a deer in the headlights look that I get.
Who's your favorite child?
Yeah, well, no, it's not even that, it's there's so many really fascinating things that when I end up answering it, it'll be those things.
Well,
sorry, my fault.
That's okay. It'll be those things that just happen to pop into my head at the time. And later I'll say, but I left out this one and that one and the other one, because there's just been so many really cool things.
mm-hmm.
And you also have to keep in mind that NIAC aims a very far event horizon. Our goal is to really change the future. And so, when we stretch that far, it's kind of rare for a project to actually get to fruition in that sense. Nonetheless, we've had quite a number of impactful studies. So more to the point, we've funded things that have gone from through the Arthur C. Clarke stages of that's impossible. Oh, it's a good idea, but it's not worth doing. To Oh, wow, I knew it was a good idea all along. So even if they haven't been funded yet, they're part of the canon of space. And one example that really comes to mind, and it actually goes back to Bob Casanova's institute, and that's the star shade that Webb Cache came up with couple of decades ago now. It's a way to filter out the light of a star so that you can see with a telescope, you can see the planets surrounding it, and to disguise the to block the zodiacal light of the star. And that literally went through all three stages in a very short period of time. And even though we haven't yet flown a star shade, it's always one of those things that says, well, if we want to image an exoplanet, let's think about it. Well, an internal coronagraph, a star shade, I mean, it's always right there on the list of things to do. And we've actually followed that up in the current incarnation of NIAC with some studies that also employ star shades.
Doesn't the Webb telescope have a star shade?
No, the Webb telescope, no, that's a sunscreen.
Okay.
Sunscreen, star shades.
Okay.
Sunscreen is blocking our sun's light. Star shades is blocking that target star's light.
They do have a
And-
coronagraph though, so a little similar, but
Close, internal.
internal.
Yeah, so that's an example. And we funded a project again that has not yet made it to fruition, but we've changed the dialogue on how you can image the interior of a star, of our fusion burning sun, and actually see what's going on in the sun by using the neutrinos that are coming from the sun and putting a spacecraft close enough to the sun that the count rate goes up just by being close. Now that again, that's not happening. It's not happening anytime soon, but there is going to be a CubeSat launch probably next year. That's the plan, to test the fundamental detector that would be an integral component of this far-reaching idea of how do we actually observe the fusion burning core of the sun. That's another one of my favorite topics because it gets to the fact that it was not an aerospace engineer that came to us with that idea. He was a particle physicist that had never worked with NASA before. And he had this idea based on what he did, CERN and Fermilab. He says, I think I might be able to do something interesting here. And it has made it through the whole sequence of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So I could go on.
I can mention one. May I?
Yes.
Please.
Let me mention one that has made it to flight, and quite interesting. I actually participated on this. Started when I was at the Planetary Society. It was led by a JPL thing, and that was the interplanetary CubeSat idea. At the time, they were not large. All spacecraft were large, and the interplanetary CubeSats were sneered at by many of the professionals, and Rob Staley at JPL, led a team, which I joined, to do interplanetary CubeSat, and that resulted in a lot of thinking about what could be done with small sats in the solar system, including the successful Marco communication satellites that were launched to Mars. And also related to Planetary Society interests. Of course, we have our own CubeSat with the light sail, and it influenced the whole aspect of building CubeSats in sections, from 1U to 2U to 3U to 6U and so forth. So that was a success of NIAC, as well as a success of things that can get integrated into the space program quickly, and as a result of partnerships between different organizations.
And I want, if I still have time to answer that one, the started question, and still have time to
Of course.
other questions later. One of the things that we're proud of about NIAC is not just the projects that we fund directly, but the atmosphere of creativity and innovation that we try to foster in the broader aerospace community. And so the idea there is to let the community at large know that it's okay to think about these crazy ideas, and maybe if they think hard enough, they can make it happen. And a good example that started back again in Bob Casanova's era. So when you say, you might really need to ask, the NASA Institute, NASA NIAC about 10 years from now, because that's really how, how this germination period most of the time takes, although Lou had a great example. But NIAC under Bob Casanova funded a thing called a mesocopter, which was a way to fly on the surface of Mars.
It'll never work.
And
Ludicrous.
so Illencrew was giving a presentation at Stanford about his concept, the mesocopter funded by NASA. And a JPL individual was sitting in the back of the room and heard his talk and said, I don't think we could do it that way, but I bet we could make it work. And a decade later, we had Ingenuity on the surface of Mars.
Yeah.
And that PI directly credits his thought process being, the spark was listening to another NIAC talk. So one of the things we do is try to foster this community where we exchange information freely. There's very little of this, hey, don't talk to me because I want to make money off of this idea. It's more like, hey, look, I got this really cool idea. What can you do with it? What else can we do with this? Mm-hmm. And so that's something that we try to foster. And really, that's one of our metrics of success.
Go for it.
I'm going to get back.
I'm going to jump in and that was slightly, may I?
Yeah.
Okay. This perspective on that, there are many things in the NIAC and I've spent a lot of time with NIAC fellows over the last few years. Many of them think they're pretty close to flight. Yeah, there's some ideas for sending out missions to Proxima Centauri that aren't near flight, or building the one that we're going to hear a lot more about tomorrow, building Mars habitats out of indigenous material and fungi on Mars. Those are long range, no question. They may not get done this century or toward the end of it, if at all, or something derivative from them. But there's a number of people in the NIAC program who think they might be ready for flight in 3 to 5 years. They may be over optimistic. We usually are when we start a project. I worked on a NIAC proposal, which I actually hope does a test flight within a couple of years from now, a few years ago. So it's a mix. There are people who are ready to put things down on the surface of Mars or on the backside of the moon, who are ready to fly fast through the solar system, with a mission that could, in principle, be launched next year if only the technology gets this test or gets proved. So it is a mix of activities that we think can be that might influence the next 5 to 10 years, and NASA needs that. NASA gets caught sometimes in the big mission that it can't do because it gets delayed and delayed and delayed, and it needs a whole lot of innovative ideas that keep exploration going on a lot of different fronts. And so NIAC, I think, plays a big role in fostering, as Moran said, not just the ideas, but the community of people that bring along those ideas.
I got a follow-up, if that's okay. And it's for you primarily, Lou, since this is a Planetary Society event, courtesy of NIAC. And if you've just joined us, we are on the NIAC stage. NIAC makes me think of, it's a much smaller program for now, but science and technology empowered by the public. The STEP grant program that we do with the Planetary Society, which is a long ways from being the first support of something like a NIAC project. I mean, the Planetary Society, almost from the beginning, right, has been looking for worthwhile projects to support that might not have found support elsewhere.
I can remember Carl Sagan and I walking on the street here in Pasadena, actually not far from here, and we were talking about different visions we had at the Planetary Society, or not different visions. His vision, that's a good idea, Carl. But of things that we could do, and we were mostly focused on getting members. The direct mail, the advertising, the promotion, and also our efforts with Congress and trying to restore the planetary program. I said, but we're doing pretty well. We're getting a lot of members, and there's a lot of interest, and some of these new ideas that people are bringing to us, maybe they'll lead to something. And Carl said, I think there'll be a day when the Planetary Society will actually be able to fund its own projects, things that will be seed further exploration. And we actually wrote that into our charter at the time, seeding further exploration. And he said, and maybe someday we'll even be able to have our own satellite. Well, of course, now we do. And so, yes, there has been a synergy between the ideas that you think of while you're walking down the street and ideas that you end up being able to fly in space and be part of a mission.
We've got something else that came in from an anonymous attendee, but I want to hold off on that and let you jump in with another question first and remind everybody that you can either post in the member community where Amber is keeping track of it and relaying stuff to me, or directly in the Q&A, the chat equivalent here in Zoom.
Well, if anyone wants to apply to the STEP grant program, you can go onto our website and do so. We can only award so many grants out there. The ones that come in are amazing, and there are so many that we can't fund that we want to do. NIAC, I think, has a similar problem that there are so many innovative ideas that are coming in here, but you have to down select from them. And these are necessarily ones that are, they might have a high risk. They might not necessarily pan out. In that context, how do you decide who to give funding to?
So that's a good question, and it's a challenge that I face every year.
Yeah.
NIAC is competitive. You have to write a proposal to NIAC through the standard NASA system. We try to make that call for proposals as accessible to the innovative community, the non-aerospace familiar community as we can, okay? And we also make it as simple as we can. Basically, what we have is a two-step process. The phase one, we'll put a call out in early June, and we'll say, send us a 3-page description of what your cool idea is. Tell us what your cool idea is. Give us a what we call an overview chart that summarizes your cool idea. And then they have to fill in some bureaucratic boilerplate that's associated with the NASA system. But we try to make this whole process as simple as we can. And we think they're pretty successful in communicating this opportunity, because we get 300 or more proposals every year. The 300 or so proposals, we in the program office look over every one of them and decide which ones we want to invite to just a little bit more level of detail, a step B proposal. And in the step B proposal, instead of only 3 pages, it's only 8 pages. But now you got to add some of the stuff like, how much money are you actually asking for? How, who do we pay? What are you going to do, when you do your studies? Some of those details that then go to technical panels for review. Okay. The technical panels get, we invite typically 100 or so of the step A's to come into step B. They get divided up among 4 or 5 panels to be reviewed by technical experts. And one of our jobs when we invite these panelists in is to convey to them, NIAC really is different. Listen to me. NIAC really is different. Don't apply your usual peer review process to the review of these proposals. We are seriously looking for those things that can change the future, okay? And if it looks like a go-do, it's not in our bailiwick, unless it's a go-do that nobody ever thought of before, okay? If it's a go-do that says, oh my God, if somebody had only thought of this before, we could do it. So we don't just fund those, innovative things, that have really crazy out there ideas. We fund what former program manager Jason Derleth used to call the iPhone example. It's a thing that can change the world, totally built by existing capability, but it totally changes the world. So we convey to the panelists of these things, we're looking for those things that are different, okay, that could really have the chance of changing the future. And I usually let them know one more piece. Bob Casanova, original NIAC, always had kind of a rule in the back of his mind. Well, wasn't in the back of his mind. He told the guys, his panel that would come in, he says, if there's not one of you on the panel that tells me this won't work, I'm not going to fund it. Somebody has to tell me this won't work, as long as a few of the other guys out there say, well, we don't know it won't. And if it might work and it might change the future, that's what he was looking for. And I tell the panel, that's what we're still looking for. So we do that peer review process. Then now we enter the NASA bureaucracy. We take the results of the peer review process, we submit it to the formal NASA management chain, source selection official. We tell them what the panel recommended as the most innovative ideas. The source selection official now, in general, respects what the panelists said. Source selection official has one last tweak where he can do some programmatic balance if necessary, but that's usually really around the edges of the selection. It's almost always, what did the panel think was the really crazy ideas that we should take a chance on? Those get selected, awarded, and the rest is history.
And sometimes you make a mistake.
Oh, well,
And sometimes, no,
if we
that's the point I wanted to make, which is I wanted to make this is sometimes they really fund some really stupid things. Well, that's my opinion. Actually, 7 other people in the room disagreed with me. They thought it wasn't so bad, but that's the point. They fund things, and they do fund things that don't work. After a while, you find out it doesn't work, which is, again, very different from the rest of NASA, which doesn't want to touch anything that not everybody agrees will work. So in that case, they will take chances on ideas that some old fuddy-duddy like me will say, that's pretty stupid. And somebody else will say, oh, that works because I saw it on television on the Star Trek episode. And, so there's that range of idea. But I found over the years that, and today I can just tell you, everything I heard belongs in NIAC. Some things I think are a little way out and they're not going to happen. And, even in 100 years, but they belong here because they're stimulating some thinking that really needs to go on.
We're going to have to wrap up with you guys in 2 or 3 minutes so that we can bring up some of these NIAC fellows and hear from them about their projects. Hopefully we got a little bit of diversity here. One that's solar sail related, Lou, near and dear to your heart.
Yes.
But let me ask you a couple of things. Well, I got one other that I want to ask, Ron. I've figured out warp drive. Can I make a NIAC proposal? I don't work at a NASA center. I'm not with a university. I don't even work for a company in aerospace. Can I?
Anyone that is a U.S. that has a U.S. That the United States government can pay. It's U.S. citizen, U.S. That's the thing. We no exchange of funds to foreign entities. So the caveat is you could even be a foreign entity and bid and win as long as you don't ask us to pay you. Okay? And if you want the cachet of being a NIAC fellow and you're not asking for any money, you can bid. The garage inventor, we may have to talk to the lawyers about it a little while, but you can still try. But yes, absolutely, we encourage garage inventors. We've had several, literally use their garage to develop this. Tom Ditto.
Very good, and he's brilliant, and he doesn't belong to any institution, but he works with a lot of institutions. He does, yeah.
We've had students that we even had a student that won an award. What you got to do is you got to go to the federal government and get your little cage code or whatever they call it these days and get registered in Inspires, and boom, you're eligible.
Nice. Mm-hmm. I have a somewhat related question from an anonymous viewer. And it's general.
You
but we
allow
can...
anonymous questions?
No, there's no.
If I was the executive director of the Planetary Society,
yeah, thank God that's over.
I would not have allowed anonymous questions. I just want you to know that.
Have I thanked you again in the last half hour for hiring me 25 years ago?
Okay.
Why aren't there more women and minorities pursuing STEM as a career? In my aerospace class, we had 50 men and 3 women, but that was 20 years ago. Why is that, and how can we improve this? Let's make it NIAC specific, because we're seeing more and more women in the sciences, still not as many. That's still a big impact.
In your next panel, I think you're going to have well represented.
We will.
Women and minorities. And I want to say that NIAC has done a very good job in the last several years for sure, of not just seeking it, but aggressive outreach to communities to involve that, and there are many. There are many. Now, I don't know your anonymous viewers class in particular, but I think NIAC is doing a pretty good job.
I have seen
Other
that
parts of
improvement.
NASA may not be, but in general, I think it is very good.
I know from the start that was a priority.
And you can ask your next viewers, as I say, there'll be good examples of
So one of the things that
that.
we try to do.
I mean, next guests here.
One of the things that I try to do, and I'm always trying to do it better, and I acknowledge failings in many technical disciplines where it's very difficult to get women and other minorities, identified, but to sit on the panels that I set up for these reviews, because when you're on the review panel, that's when you really see, this is how it really works. And I do my best to reach out to include minorities, underrepresented communities on the panel. And you may even hear from someone who benefited from having served on the panel for a few years to really get some insight into how NIAC works as one of the successes of that philosophy. I'm always trying to do better at that. If there's any way that you can reach out to me and say, how do I serve on a NIAC panel? Let me know. I'm in the middle of doing it right now. I'm almost closed this year's panels, but even next year, the year after. And I'm allowed to coach you to help you get your step A in NIAC's, to be compliant with what NIAC is trying to do. I use the word coach, but it really is coaching. You reach out to me in the March, April timeframe and say, hey, Ron, I've got this crazy idea. Is this something NIAC would be interested in? How do I make this compliant with what NIAC is trying to do? And I can literally walk you through the steps you need to do to be sure that you are at least compliant. And I'm allowed to, for step A, I'm allowed to do that because I don't make the final selection at step B. Just because I help you make a step A that's compliant doesn't mean that you're going to have a step up in step B, right? So competitively, it's totally above board this way. What I want to do is make sure you understand the program and you don't waste your time writing a proposal that, misses the mark by ever so little. And we get frustrated because, if they only did this, we could have put that in there, and that really good idea, might make it all the way to funding. So I'm allowed to help you, and please find a way to reach out to me. ron.turner@nasa.gov, okay? Or, 1-800-RON-TURNER, as Mike LaPointe said at one of the previous calls with you guys. So please take advantage of that opportunity.
And anybody who wants to learn more, just Google or your favorite search engine, NASA NIAC. One more before we let them go, Sarah.
Be careful,
Okay.
don't dictate that.
One more thing, I want to be respectful of all the rest of our guests.
Google does not spell NIAC correctly. Go ahead.
NIAC.
Yeah.
Here you go. Is NIAC basically like Silicon Valley's angel funding? Most will fail, but some succeed big and therefore fund. NASA's not necessarily going to make a profit off of the successful ones, right?
Mm-hmm. Good question.
Yeah, there's obviously a different philosophy, the Silicon Valley and venture funding, which are looking to make money from a thing. So you can have an idea that many ideas, most of the ideas, for all of the ideas I think we maybe heard today will not make money. And so there you have to, it's a different criteria,
Yeah.
of course. But the idea that many can fail on the way to finding the 2 or 3 in a cohort that's successful is a similar idea.
So even over the NASA Innovative Advanced Concepts Program, just to be clear, what we're trying to do is inspire innovation that strengthens the U.S. aerospace community. So if your idea doesn't have to be aimed at a well-known NASA mission or a well-identified NASA mission. If you think your idea is, something that might be adopted by a commercial space, by the commercial space community, we can still, give you the opportunity to develop the the impact, the feasibility of your idea, you don't have to have NASA be the necessary end point of your concept. Granted, we love it that way, and NASA is certainly the biggest customer of the NIAC ideas, but we're really open to the broader aerospace community and strengthening the U.S. aerospace capability and strengthening the U.S. innovative concept, fostering innovation and creativity throughout the United States
Excellent.
Well said.
and the world.
I think we should now move on to our second phase. It's been so wonderful having both of you here, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, guys.
Great.
And I
Thank
hope you
you.
have a beautiful day 3. I'm going to see you here tomorrow.
Well, it's been fun, and it will continue to be fun. Thank you.
And I see at least 2 of our
Keep
presenters
up the
are
good work, Matt and
NIAC
Sarah.
fellows.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lou.
Sorry, everyone. It's hard to see through these blaring lights.
Come on up, folks.
And while we're making this shift, I wanted to come back to that idea of the underrepresentation of women and other people within the science community. Even in my graduating class, I was one of 2 women graduating in my class at UC Berkeley in astrophysics. It is still true that people are underrepresented, but I tell you, every year that goes by, there are more and more people. And if you don't make it through, please don't ever blame yourself, but also be empowered to do so. You are welcome in this community. And I think everyone here would agree. We want to welcome you here. So,
Absolutely. Can't
yeah.
wait. So we're going to shift one of these over. I'm going to lower that a little bit first.
yeah.
That's better because it won't block the face. And you each get your own mic, and Sarah and I are going to share.
Matt and I will fight.
Fight over a microphone. Who'd have thought? So please introduce us to our fellows.
All right. Well,
Go
I'm
ahead.
just going to
You
take
can
it.
handhold it.
Yeah, I've had the honor of meeting 2 of you in the last year. I've never had an occasion to meet you yet, which is wonderful. Joining us today, we have 3 fellows. Edward Balaban here at the end from NASA Ames Research Center with a really cool idea for a fluidic telescope. I was having a conversation with Bruce Betts about this just the other day. He's like, fluidic telescope, what is that? We'll find out. Then Mahmouda Sultana from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. This is the one for people who enjoyed our light sail mission. If you want to see some solar sailing going out to the outer solar system, that is going to be your project. And then Lynn Rothschild, also from NASA Ames Research Center. I believe you are the first person, and correct me if I'm wrong, the first person to have a phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 project all in the same year. Is that right?
As far as I know.
That is absolutely amazing. I know we only have you for a limited amount of time, but I would love for you to go down the line and tell us a little bit about your project and what you've put forward. Of course, Lynn, that's very complicated for you because you have 3 of them.
Maybe we should start with the others.
Yeah, actually, let's start with you, Edward.
Sure. Our project is called the Fluidic Telescope, abbreviated as FLUTE. We're very proud of that acronym. And the idea is to break through the current barriers imposed by launch vehicles in terms of size of telescopes, space telescopes. As you know, James Webb Telescope, which launched a couple of years ago, is a miracle of engineering. But
Don't know why it decided to do that. Sorry.
Apologies, friends.
Go ahead.
but it took a long time to develop, a lot of money to develop, and the main mirror for the telescope had to be folded like origami to fit inside the launch vehicle. And a lot of things could have gone wrong. Fortunately, they didn't. And we got a beautiful working telescope. But its mirror is 6.5 meters in diameter, and scaling beyond that will become more and more difficult. So we wanted to break through that barrier and enable more exciting astronomy, astrophysics, cosmology, because these disciplines require larger and larger telescopes to be able to see smaller, fainter, more distant objects, both in terms of distance and time. And so the idea for this telescope just came out out of a casual conversation, actually at a family picnic that we had with a friend of mine, visiting friend of mine. Uh, and I'm not an astronomer. I'm not a telescope designer. My main field is actually robotics, AI, autonomy. But my friend was an expert in fluid mechanics and in microfluidics. And he was telling me about the work that his lab is doing. He is a university professor on a lab on a chip with reconfigurable channels where microscopic droplets of fluid gets pushed around for medical and chemical analysis. And for whatever reason, I had a brain glitch at that moment, and I blurted out something like, well, how about we do that, but in space, and build a giant space telescope? So naturally, he thought, I'm having a heat stroke or something, but being a nice enough guy, he humored me and we discussed it further. And at first we thought that somebody at any moment is going to tell us why we're stupid. And we kept looking over our shoulders for somebody to tell us that, but turned out to be a viable idea. So we're running with it. And we're very grateful for the NIAC program for supporting us.
Before we move on, I do have one question, which is you're keeping this fluid, right? You don't want to freeze this fluid in space?
No, originally we actually thought of solidifying our fluids that form our mirror. But that had some advantages, some disadvantages. So for now, we're pursuing a mirror that will remain liquid in space. But we haven't fully abandoned a solidified mirror. In fact, in our recent series of microgravity experiments, we followed up on some of our International Space Station experiments on solidifying optical components.
There's a line from your NIAC report that I flagged because it blew me away. In order to make the concept feasible to implement in the next 15 to 20 years with near-term technologies and realistic cost, we limit the diameter of the primary mirror to 50 meters. So not only a hell of a lot bigger than the JWST, but bigger than any telescope planned that's currently being built, a terrestrial telescope.
That's right. And it's a funny story about this number. When we were writing the first NIAC proposal, we needed some concept, right? Because NIAC is centered on mission concepts. And I played around with numbers literally on the back of an envelope, and 50 meters felt like an ambitious but doable number. And then once we got the phase 1 award, we did a more detailed analysis, and turned out 50 meters is what we can do with current technologies. And scaling beyond that becomes a little bit more difficult.
I think we should save all the questions for the end, probably, because we will get bogged down in, oh my gosh, so many amazing questions. But Mahmoud, can you talk a little bit about your project? And specifically, I'm very interested in how you are integrating the components straight into the spacecraft. This is a very novel idea.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy to talk about Sciencecraft for outer planet exploration, we call SCOPE. This is a concept to develop a science mission architecture that will make outer solar system missions much more accessible, meaning it would be faster, cheaper, require hopefully less development time so that we can do more outer planet missions within a resource constraint environment. In this project, we are looking to print a science instrument directly on the solar cell to make a monolithic structure. We have seen a number of solar cell efforts. There have been solar cell proposals and technology demonstration missions. But one thing that I always thought was missing with a lot of the solar cell missions was that they always talk about going to, a target really fast, but not really doing a lot of meaningful science measurements. It's really important to me for a mission to be successful to make some meaningful science measurements and then send the data back to Earth so that we can learn about, that particular target. Solar cells, although they are quite an exciting alternative for propulsion, and especially using solar cell closer to the sun so that we can use the high density of solar radiation to propel us to the outer solar system can be really interesting. But the solar cells have very little room in terms of mass for science payloads. And that's part of the reason why we don't really see a traditional payload on a science, in a solar cell technology demonstration mission. So one of the innovations in this science craft concept is to print a science instrument, a spectrometer, directly on the cell. And that concept is enabled by something called quantum dot spectrometer that's being developed in my lab. We take advantage of some of the special optical properties of quantum dots to make this spectrometer. With a single instrument, we can do UV spectroscopy, we can do imaging as well as infrared spectroscopy.
I love this idea because we all want to go out to Uranus and Neptune. We haven't been back there in forever. And I considering what we're seeing with the NASA budget and the issues there, it might be quite a while until we get there. I believe NASA will do it, but this is a way that we can do it maybe at a lower cost and in a shorter time frame. Did you have any questions before we move on to Lynn's massive amount of, please, because my goodness.
I do want to remind folks once again, if you hear something that piques your imagination, your curiosity, go ahead and send us a note here in the Q&A in the Zoom session or in the member community, even though you can't be watching us there, I guess, unless I ever got that to work. But we look forward to getting your reactions and your questions for these NIAC fellows.
I also want to say too that the webcast I've been hosting for the last few days is going to be archived online, so you can actually watch all of their presentations. I'm going to be bringing the information from all the interviews that I'm doing onto 2 episodes of Planetary Radio. People requested 2. I was going to do 1. I'll give you 2 because, I mean, come on, how do you down select from all this? It's amazing.
And they can catch you live tomorrow, the 3rd and final day.
Yeah, 3rd and final day. And also all the information about their projects is online. And I'm sure that you could reach out to them as well, because, I mean, come on, too many questions. But let's start with your phase 1 project, Lynn. What was your new project this year?
Let me just explain that unlike my esteemed colleagues to my left and most of the people in the NIAC program, I'm a biologist. And actually, worse than that, my background's in evolutionary biology. I got hired by NASA years ago to look for life in the universe. So my thing is really more astrobiology. And then about 20 years ago, I was directed to start a program in synthetic biology for the agency. And a lot of people who are in synthetic biology come from an engineering background. And all of a sudden, I started feeling my brain torque and started getting this worldview of how an engineer thinks about things. And someone said to me about that time, there's a program for you at NASA headquarters. It's called NIAC. And it's like, I'll never do this. But I've discovered sort of my niche has been sort of looking at where some of NASA's problems are and seeing if there's a biological solution. And so, I've had 5 phase 1 NIACs that are very different. And right now I have 3 active ones, you said. The phase 1 is taking the issue of the fact that on Mars, there is water. That's good news because all life needs water. The bad news is it's got perchlorates in it. And these are toxins. You can look for the EPA standards for drinking water and so on. And it's a whole lot worse on Mars than you're going to find in drinking water here. In fact, the perchlorates are used in rocket propellant and in airbags and a few other things as well. So the issue is that we can't actually drink the water on Mars. That's the bad news. So how do we deal with detoxifying it? And of course, there are mechanical solutions to it, but there are microbes that already can do that sort of thing. Unfortunately, the microbes that can do it are also not the ones that I would feel comfortable sending to Mars. The problem is they're not strong enough. They tend to be anaerobes and so on. And so our idea is to take this capability that nature has evolved to take perchlorate molecules and reduce them down to chloride, so just Cl minus, and 2 molecules of oxygen, which is perfect because then we can breathe the oxygen. And so to do that by taking these capabilities out of these wimpy organisms that can do it and put it into a tougher organism that I know is going to be just fine, given the right bioreactor on Mars, and then you can just pump the water out of Mars, put it through a filter where you could then potentially have a really interesting side astrobiology experiment and take the rest of it and detoxify it through these microbes that we're actually making. And then you've got your bottles of water. So that's been a really interesting one, something that is a problem we've been sort of thinking about for a while, but I didn't really think that I was going to jump in, and one of my postdocs said, we're doing this. And anyway, there we are. So that's the phase 1. Should I push on?
Well, I just want to mention that what's cool about this is that this not only has applications for Mars, but that means also that using this technology, we can help with all the perchlorate situation here on Earth and things like, maybe there are some toxic spills, or maybe someone breathes a little bit too much out of their airbag, which I know I've heard before, hold your breath when you're in a car accident.
Right.
That's terrifying.
I mean, that's in the air, but I did read a few little, sort of scary things this morning. There was an article in Consumer Reports recently that apparently a certain amount of baby food has trace levels of perchlorates. There are other sorts of things that perchlorate sneaking its way into. So it could actually be an even more useful NIAC than I realized when we proposed it.
Yeah. And the same goes for your phase 2 project. I think this one also has wild applications on Earth, not just in space.
So this is a very different sort of project. And this is again started by a pharmacist at the University of Nottingham, Phil Williams, coming to me and saying, I think you should make an astropharmacy. It's like, my knowledge of pharmaceuticals was sort of layman level. You go to the pharmacy and you buy a bottle of aspirin or malaria pill or something. And I said, no, I can't do it. He said, you can make proteins, can't you? I said, of course I can. He said, well, then you can make a pharmacy. Because it turns out that something like 1/3 of the new drugs that are approved by the FDA every year are made of very short proteins, so they're known as peptide-based drugs. And these are the ones you may have heard about that tend to be extremely expensive. And the reason is, pharmaceutical companies are in the business of making money. I work for NASA. I'm not. I'm in the idea business. And so there's that problem. But the other issue, and that's where it really meets the space exploration problem, is these are very unstable, particularly if they don't have refrigeration. So even with refrigeration, many of these are only good for about 6 months. And so you compare that to, an Advil pill or, Tylenol or anything else. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention name brands on here, but, too late. Any of these pills that you've got in the cabinet, they have an expiration date, but it's not 6 months. It's much longer. And so at this point, you have this issue where there's a range of pharmaceuticals that are taken into space for ISS. And so they're guessing what an astronaut might need. And they may be right, they may be wrong. It may be that there's something that they need a lot of, and most of it they don't need any. But on top of that, they have this issue that they couldn't even look at this class of new drugs that's coming along that could solve a lot of problems. They've been really good. And so we looked at that and said, well, the easiest thing for us to make actually is a protein. And those are the least stable. So it's a win-win. And I've challenged my team to make it the size of a wallet so that you basically pre-program bacteria that you can then dry out. And so you've got little, like a powder of bacteria. So they weigh basically nothing. You can have a library of a gazillion drugs. I don't know if that's a standard SI unit, but you could, that weigh virtually nothing. And you have a sort of standardized system where once you need the drug, you add liquid, the culture medium, they grow up, and we're talking about very tiny reactors of maybe a milliliter. And then they go through two purification steps. We make sure the purity's okay, and they're good to go. And so I'm really hoping that someday this is something that saves an astronaut's life, or at least makes their life a whole lot better. And we've talked to some of the flight surgeons at Johnson Space Center, and they can't even think about using this class of drugs at this point. And so they're sort of blown away by that idea. But once again, it's something that has terrestrial spin-offs. So people that are in areas that are difficult to access, or situation where there's a problem with the drug chain. We've just been through a pandemic, so we know what supply chain issues are. Or you're in a closed environment like a submarine, maybe, that would be analogous to being in a long duration space mission. Or I've talked to some people who are concerned about, venom bites. Could you make an antitoxin, for example? And obviously, I am in no position to start a pharmaceutical company. I have no interest in it. But what I'm hoping is that this technology that we started here is something that will be picked up and be used very widely. There is already some interest from one of the commercial space stations that does have a lot of pharmaceutical interests from companies making pharmaceuticals in space. And they think some of what we've developed could be a very useful platform for them. So this has been definitely exciting. I've learned a whole lot more about pharmaceuticals than I knew 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. And you're going to need that when people are living in, buildings on Mars, particularly the ones that you're hoping to build using this mycotexture. This is the one that you've managed to get all the way to phase 3.
I got funded on the 26th of June, and I am still in shock in September. So this is a project that, to explain for those of you who don't know, mushrooms. I mean, everyone knows what a mushroom is, but a mushroom is really the fruiting body of a class of fungi called filamentous fungi. So things like yeast or unicellular fungi, the things that make your bread and beer and so on. But most fungi are filamentous, and some of them have a fruiting body for reproduction called a mushroom. And so that you're familiar with. You're less familiar with what's underground, and that's really the body of these mushrooms. And they are particularly good, this underground part that's composed of hairs called mycelia, at binding soil. And many of them are just, make my day with a wood chip, or any sort of plant matter. That is their thing. And so their ecosystem services level is very high. They're really good at decaying things and, all this sort of stuff. But others have pointed out that you can take, for example, wood chips or lawn, lawn scraps or whatever, and put it in a mold with some of these fungi, and they will grow to bind this material. And you end up with something, depending upon the material in there and how long you've grown and so on, that can be a little bit mushy. It can be sort of styrofoamy-like. If you bake it at a higher temperature, you end up with something that you would absolutely swear was particle board. Or you could not put any thing in to have it bind, and you can end up with something that looks like imitation leather. And so some of my students in a synthetic biology competition in 2014, I challenged them to make a biodegradable drone. And one of the students realized that you could potentially use this approach to make the body of a drone. Now, the competition was really being judged on other things, so I must say I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. But to cut to the chase, we got a very nice article in New Scientist about that project. And next thing we knew, the phone was ringing off the hook for us, for this company, Ecovative, that had pioneered this sort of work. And so I started thinking, maybe there's something to this. Wouldn't it be cool to build a whole house out of it on Mars? And so I sort of, tuck it away as one of 1,000 crazy ideas. And then I was in Cleveland, and I met the principal architect of Red House Studios, Chris Maurer. who had been starting to play with what he calls mycotecture. Mycology is the study of fungi, and texture from architecture, so he called it mycotecture. And we were having lunch together, and I said, I had this crazy idea we could use this to build a habitat on Mars. She said, I have exactly the same idea, and shook hands, and it's like, deal, we're going in together. And I said, I know the program. So we proposed to do that. Now, you can't just grow a habitat on the surface of Mars the way you could here, because liquid water isn't stable. And since we started in phase 1, we've pivoted more to looking at the lunar applications first because of the Artemis mission. So it's a much more immediate concern. And so we have had to stick with the original concept from phase 1 to 2 to 3 of having this vision of making a habitat. But it certainly has occurred to us, you can make tables, and you can make chairs, and you can make beds, and you can make all sorts of things, rover shells, out of fungal mycelia. And so we've ended up having a partnership with one of the commercial space stations that NASA's given seed money for. Of course, seed money's over $200 million, called Starlab. And they have certainly been attracted to the fact that our mycotecture has great acoustical properties. It's got great psychological benefits. You don't feel like you're looking at steel, you're looking at a biological material. It's got very low flammability, low mass, all sorts of great things. So they think it would be great to put some very thin panels of this that line the inside of some of the human working areas. And we'd like to grow one in space as well, just to show we can. And we would very much like to get into the living quarters and make some of the beds and furniture and so on as well. And then the second part is that I have this vision of sending a payload to the surface of the moon with little miniature ones of these houses and pushing them out the door and having a camera and watch this little city grow. And then I could do the mic drop and say, yeah, we can do this for sure on Mars now, or the moon. In fairness, I realize that we're not likely to build a whole habitat 100% out of mycotecture, but I bet your house isn't 100% brick or 100% stone. It's like you don't say to the architect, I want the piping stone and I want the roof stone. No, that's ridiculous. Or wood or anything else. You use a palette of materials, architecture word I discovered. And so if at the end of the day, we have introduced mycotecture as part of this palette for NASA missions, I will be happy. So that's what that's all about.
I have so many questions, but it looks like you have one, Matt.
I do, but it's more, well, there's a specific one and a more generic one. But as you can tell, we got 5 projects for the price of 3 here. And we are past the hour. That's okay with us. If you can stick with us, that's great.
Is it okay with you guys? You all right?
Absolutely.
I got one of my own and then one maybe for the 3 of you, if you can stick around a few minutes, like Sarah said. In your write-up, Lynn, there was mention of some of the things that you can do to give different characteristics to the mycotecture. Yes, mycotecture.
Yep.
One of them was add melanin. Why melanin?
Exactly. And remind the audience that melanin is the pigment that actually makes our skin dark in the summer when we tan. Obviously they're humans with a range of melanin content in their skin already. But many other organisms make melanin, including there are a certain number of fungi that do. And in our case, we tan in the summer because our skin's trying to protect us from ultraviolet radiation. Works the same with fungi. But it turns out that we have preliminary data suggesting that melanin is also actually very good at blocking ionizing radiation. So if we used melanized fungi, we may also be able to provide a certain amount of radiation protection all at once to these habitats.
Here's the generic question, and then there's another one specifically for you, Lynn. It's really just what the existence of a program like NIAC means to the 3 of you, and probably by extension to the other fellows.
Thank you. That was exactly a question I was going to ask. So yeah,
Of course.
we'll start with you at the end.
I love NIAC. I think it's really the best NASA program. And I think that um, in my idealistic view, in the future, NASA, more of NASA will become like NIAC, where we leave the more explored paths to the industry, to other government agencies, and really push the boundaries of what's possible. And ideas like our fluidic telescope or Mars helicopter, right, would not be picked up right now by any other NASA program just because they're a little bit out there. And there are not too many other ways of making them a little bit more plausible, building a prototype, funding a prototype, and showing that it can actually work. And then, throughout my career, I discovered that you can make the most beautiful PowerPoint presentation, right, on an idea, but it's not, it rarely convinces people, especially if an idea is out there. But once you get something working, some minimal working example, a prototype, even a simulation, that's when people start feeling it's real. And that's when more money can be unlocked. And NIAC serves that purpose for NASA.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I have been a principal investigator funded by several other STMD programs, including Early Career Initiative, as well as SMT and HOEMD programs. But I have to say that NIAC is probably my most favorite program because it allows me to sort of exercise my creativity. I don't have to worry about coming up with a realistic concept that's going to be implemented in the near term. I can think about without having to worry about the boundaries. I can think about a vision, something that could be game changing. Potentially for space science and NASA missions, and that's really nice. There is no other NASA program that funds that type of far-reaching ideas that are not going to be implemented over the next few years. Also, what I like about NIAC is that the program management is very much engaged. They try to help us get infused into other opportunities, for future steps, for next steps. And also the symposium is really nice because we can interact with other NIAC fellows, benefit from some of their creative ideas, see how we can collaborate, maybe infuse, some of the other technologies with ours to perhaps create a new idea. So that's really nice and unique about NIAC.
Lynn?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the two of you put it so brilliantly well. There are a certain number of people in the world who don't believe that science is a creative enterprise or engineering is a creative enterprise. And we talked about that in the panel this morning. And it is. We need the most creative people in science and engineering. And the problem is that many funding programs, and I'm not just talking about NASA, but across in other agencies as well, you have to have almost done half your work before you even propose it. They are very risk averse. And so it's not that the scientists and engineers are necessarily risk averse, but the funders are. And in this case, the funders are the ones pushing you to be out there and really show your creativity. And so I am incredibly grateful to this program to, that encourages these crazy ideas. They do impose discipline. They make me, like all of us, we have to be in a mission context. We cannot just come up with some wild idea and say, oh, it can do everything. Well, give me one thing and prove that it's going to be better than current technologies. So this is amazing. And I always say, I wish that many more of the funding programs, both at NASA and in other agencies, were like this, because then you would really unleash the creativity of the scientists and the engineers in this country and the world as a whole.
we have what maybe we should make our last question coming in from our viewers. It's directed to you, Lynn, but I think probably all three of you can address this. Since you have NIAC Phase 1, 2, and 3 awards, you clearly have a great understanding of the process. What tips do you have for others who seek to submit proposals given your success? Definitely all applies to all three of you.
Sure. I was asked that earlier today, and I will tell the same answer. It's the same as any funding program. Read the call very carefully. They tell you exactly what they want. And if you say, well, you know, I can go a page over, or I can do this, or I can do that. No, you can't. They even do something that I've never seen another program do. They have you do a compliance table so that you're sure that you're hit all the points that they want. And so that's sort of general advice. If you want a proposal funded, look to see what they're asking for and respond to it.
It sounds so obvious, but I've
It
read
is.
grants. I've been an evaluator. It's shocking every time I've done it, how many people, we tell them what we want from them,
Yeah.
they don't give it to us.
Read the instructions.
Mahmouda?
That's the best advice. But also, I would like to repeat what Ron said earlier. The program management is really helpful. So if you have a creative idea, you can always reach out to them and just run your idea by them to make sure it fits within the NIAC scope. A lot of people have the misunderstanding that NIAC is a technology development program. It's not necessarily a technology development program. You know, new technologies are certainly a big part of NIAC's portfolio, but that's because oftentimes new technologies can enable new mission concepts or architecture, and that's what NIAC is after. So oftentimes, you know, a good idea might be can be tweaked a little bit to fit within the NIAC's scope of work, and the NIAC program management can certainly guide the proposer to do that. So yeah, definitely reaching out to NIAC program can be helpful.
I very much agree with what Lynn and Mahmouda said. Read the solicitation very carefully. And I've used the same lesson for other programs, and it's always good advice. I will also add, you know, before you submit your proposal, you know, bounce it off people. You know, don't be afraid to ask for critique. And it will sharpen your thinking. It will identify your weak spots. And if you fail the first time, there is a myth actually that you can only apply to NIAC just once with the same idea. That's not true. So when you get feedback from the reviewers, if you didn't make it the first time, improve it, resubmit again, keep trying.
There are so many questions I want to ask, but I know we're already wildly over time, and I want to respect your time tonight because I know there's some fun activities going on, and the bonding of NIAC Symposium is part of it. You need to get out there and make those connections with others so that you can accidentally trip onto a good idea, because that happens all the time around here. I've seen it happen. So thank you so much for being here with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for
Thank
having us.
you.
It's our pleasure.
And thank you, Sarah. And I hope that people will tune in. You can see all of the third and final day of NIAC presentations by going to the NIAC website. You'll find the link there. It's on Vimeo. Sarah will be starting the day off, doing interviews throughout the day with other fellows, other recipients, and closing it out as well. So enjoy your last day, Sarah.
I'm going to be so sad when it's over, but it'll come again around next year, right? I mean, thank you for passing the torch on to me so that I get to be a part of this, because I had never gotten to host a NASA conference webcast in my life before NIAC happened. So NIAC also in some way gave me a true opportunity as well. So I'm very grateful to the program.
And we are grateful to you, our members of the Planetary Society, because it's because of you that we're able to do this stuff and bring you these wonderful events and these terrific innovators and people. It's a great pleasure to be part of the society along with you. And stay tuned because we will have much more coming up in the member community. Watch for that email about the big transition that I mentioned up front as we change over our systems for how we are able to serve you better and better. And that is well underway. It may happen tomorrow, fingers crossed. We got a lot of people at headquarters just a block away from where we're sitting right now at the Pasadena Hilton, which is for this year the home of the NIAC, the NASA Innovative Advanced Concept Symposium, which will continue tomorrow. Thank you to NIAC for allowing us to do this event and do it right on the NIAC stage. Again, have a wonderful night, wonderful evening, everyone, and we will see you again soon in the member community. Bye-bye.